Hello everyone, how are you all? Hope you all are doing well. So we have started with our revision series, chapter number 1, GST in India. And introduction we have already revised, and in this video we would be revising what? Supply under GST, one of the most important chapter. As you know, we have completed full chapters with conceptual clarity, followed by all the question bank, full question bank. We have done the ICI material, RTP, MTP past exam questions we have done now. Very important and crucial step is revision. Revision is very important, and that's why we are revising the full subject in just 7 hours. Okay, so now supply under GST. If a transaction, if an activity or transaction is supplied, GST will be levied. If an activity or transaction is not supplied, GST will not be levied. So what is supply? It is taxable event under GST. It is taxable event under GST. It should be of a goods or service. Supply should be either of goods or of service. Remember definition of goods and services also we have seen. First we'll see that definition and then we'll jump to section 7. What do you mean by goods? Goods means every kind of movable property. Movable property is goods. Movable property is goods. Other than in money and security has been kept out of the definition of goods. Out of the definition of goods. But includes actionable claim. Actionable claims are goods. Growing crop, grass, things attached to and forming part of land agreed to be served before or under a contract of supply. So what is important here? Goods means every kind of movable property. Other than money and security. Money and security is kept out of the definition of goods, but includes actionable claim. Actionable claim comes under the definition of goods. Now, what do you mean by service? Anything other than goods. Anything other than goods means everything other than goods. Movable property is goods. Anything other than goods is service. That means immovable property is service. Yes, immovable property transactions and immovable property will be in the nature of service. Anything other than goods, money and security. Money and security has been kept out of the definition of service also. Okay, so money and security is out of goods, out of service. Neither goods nor service. So no GST. It is neither goods nor service. Okay, money and securities. So, but includes activity relating to use of money or its conversion by cash or by any other mode from one currency denomination to another for which separate consideration is charged. What did they say? It includes, service includes activity relating to use of money for which separate consideration is charged. For which separate consideration is charged. If you are converting, for example, one currency from one denomination to another denomination, and for that commission is charged, so that will be covered under definition of service. That will be. Why? Because it is activity relating to use of money for which separate consideration is charged. So any activity relating to use of money is not service. Money will be out of GST, but any activity relating to use of money for which separate consideration is charged, definitely it is service and GST will be levied. And it includes facilitating and arranging transaction in security. So if you are facilitating or arranging transaction in security, that also will be defined, that also will come under the definition of service. That also will come under the definition of service. Like for example, broking fees. Broking fees, that is a separate consideration. That is a separate consideration for arranging transaction in security. So that will come under the definition of service and GST will be chargeable. GST will be chargeable. Okay. So for example, if you are depositing or withdrawing money in the bank, that is transaction in money, neither goods nor service, GST will not be levied. Okay. What is that? What is that? It is transaction in money. We are analyzing the definition of goods and services. Deposit or withdrawal in the bank is what? Neither goods nor service. Why? Because it is transaction in money. Because it is transaction in money. Processing fees, it is a supply of service. Why? Because for use of money, it is a separate consideration. Separate consideration. Conversion of currency, that is transaction in money. That is transaction in money, neither goods nor service. But conversion of currency, commission for conversion of currency, that is supply of service. Why? Because separate consideration is charged. Separate consideration is charged. Sale, purchase of share, stock, derivatives, it comes in exam. Then it is transaction in security. Neither goods nor service, no GST will be levied. What? If you are selling, purchasing any shares, derivatives and all those things. So that is what transaction in securities. Transaction security. Security is out of goods, out of service, GST will not be levied. Actionable claim are what? Goods. definition goods. But as per schedule 3, we'll see lottery, betting, gambling, casino, horse racing, online money gaming. All these are what all these have been be leviable to GST. These will be leviable to GST. That we'll see in schedule 3. Okay. Then service charges or service fees or documentation fees or broking charges. It is for provision of service and it will be chargeable to GST. So any service charges and broking fees and all those things, facilitating or arranging transaction and security for which separate consideration is charged will also come under definition of service. So the most important thing in the definition of goods as well as service is money and security is neither goods nor service. But if something is for use of money, separate consideration is charged, that will be service, or facilitating or arranging transaction and security, that is also service. That will also come under the definition of service. So this was the definition of goods and services. Now, very important thing, what section 7 supply. Section 7 supply, we'll see. What does section 7(1)(a) says? 7(1)(a) very simple. It says all form of supply of goods or service made or agreed to be made for a consideration for the purpose of business. Only two things are important: for a consideration for the purpose of business. Consideration and for the purpose of business. If these two things are there, a transaction is supply as per 7(1)(a). Transaction is supply as per 7(1)(a). When? If it is what? It is for a consideration and for the purpose of business. If it is for a consideration for the purpose of business, transaction is supply as per 7(1)(a). Then comes 7(1)(a). What does it say? It says activities or transaction other than individual to its member or constitute. To its member or constitute, or vice versa. Vice versa. For cash, for deferred payment, valuable consideration, it would be what? Supply. It would be supply. Very simple. 7(1)(a). What does it say? If you are what? A person other than individual. You are what? A person other than individual. You could be what? Association of person, for example. And you are providing what? You are providing to your member or constitute. You are providing to your member, or vice versa, or vice versa. It should be for cash or for deferred payment or other valuable consideration. That activity will be treated as supply. That activity will be treated as supply. So this is what government has settled now. 7(1)(a). What does it say? Activity or transaction by a person other than individual. It could be association of person, whether incorporated or not, to its member or constitute for cash, for deferred payment or valuable consideration. They said it is supply. Very simple, settled thing now. Then comes 7(1)(b). What does 7(1)(b) says? Oh, you are importing services. You are importing services for a consideration, whether or not for the purpose of business, it would be supply. What does 7(1)(b) say? 7(1)(b) says that if you are importing services for a consideration, whether or not for the purpose of business, it could be for personal purpose also, it would be supply. It would be supply. So importation of a service for a consideration, whether or not for the purpose of business, this says it would be supply. They say it would be supply. This import of services diagram we'll see after we complete section 7. Then comes what? 7(1)(c) read with schedule 1. We'll see what does it say. So what does 7(1)(a) has said? 7(1)(a) has said there should be consideration. Consideration should be there to treat a transaction as supply as per 7(1)(a). As per 7(1)(a). But 7(1)(c) says that, oh, there are 4 activities. There are 4 activities or transaction. Even without consideration, we'll treat it as supply, that are given in schedule 1. What does it say? The activities or transactions specified in schedule 1 would be treated as supply even if made without consideration. In schedule 1, 4 activities or transactions are there. What are those 4 activities or transactions? We'll see. So schedule 1, there are 4 cases supply without consideration, and then there is no consideration. Then also that transaction would be treated as supply. There is no consideration. Then also that activity will be treated as supply. So in the following 4 cases, supply made without consideration will be treated as supply under section 7. First, permanent transfer or disposal of business asset where input tax credit has been availed. What does it say? Permanent transfer, permanently transferring or disposing of business asset where input tax credit has been availed. That means when you have purchased that asset, you have availed the input tax credit. Now you are permanently disposing of or transferring that asset. Then also government said it would be supply. Only condition is ITC should be availed. You have availed the ITC. For example, the laptop. This is a laptop. When I have purchased it, I have taken input tax credit. Now I am permanently disposing of. I am giving it to someone free of cost. So government said, what is this? This is permanent transfer or disposal of business asset where input tax credit has been taken. Okay, then it would be treated as supply. Even if you are giving it without consideration, it would be treated as supply. It would be treated as supply. So permanent transfer or disposal of business asset where input tax credit has been availed, it would be treated as supply. It would be treated as supply. Okay, but if input tax credit has not been availed, then it will not be treated as supply. So this was para 1 schedule 1. Then now next, para 2 schedule 1. What does it say? Supply of goods or services between related person or distinct person. So supply of goods or services between related person or distinct person will be treated as supply even if made without consideration. Okay, so related person or distinct person. What do you mean by distinct person? Now on one PAN number, whatever GST registrations you have taken, for each other they are distinct person. Okay, so for one PAN number, so for example I have one PAN number, I have taken GST registration in 3 states, state 1, 2 and 3. So all of these branches for each other are distinct person. 1 to 2 is distinct person, 2 to 3 is distinct person, 3 to 1 is distinct person. Yeah, all of them for each other are distinct person. So supply of goods or services, it could be either goods or services without consideration. If you are supplying to your related person or your distinct person, that would be treated as supply. You remember in the definition of related person, there is one point, employer and employee are also related person. So employer and employee are also related person. So if employer is providing something to employee without consideration, what would be the tax implication? So government said ki gifts not exceeding 50,000 by employer to employee, gifts not exceeding 50,000 by employer to employee will not be treated as supply. So if an employer is giving a gift to employee for say 5,000 or 5,000 rupees, so that will not be treated as supply. Okay, then para 3 schedule 1. Para 3 schedule 1 talks about supply between principal agent and it is for goods. Mind my word, only goods, not services. Para 3 talk about supply of goods between principal and agent. So if there is a supply of goods by principal to agent, why principal has supplied goods to agent? Because agent may undertake it to supply such goods on behalf of principal. So that will be deemed as supply. The transaction between principal and agent will be treated as supply. So in this example, for example, principal has supplied goods to agent. Why? So that agent can supply it to third person. So principal has sent goods to agent without consideration. Now agent would be undertaking it and supplying it. But when the principal supplies these goods to agent, it will be treated as supply even if it is made without consideration. This transaction between principal and agent would be treated as supply and GST will be levied. The second point is supply of goods by agent to principal. For example, the agent has procured goods from a third person and supplied to the principal. Then also where the agent undertakes to receive such goods on behalf of principal, the transaction between agent and principal will be treated as supply. Which transaction they are talking about? The transaction between agent and principal will be treated as supply. These could be a case of a procurement agent where agent what agent has undertaken? Agent has undertaken to receive such goods on behalf of principal. So in this case, the transaction between agent and principal will be treated as supply even if made without consideration. And do you remember when circular also we have studied in this particular point, in case of principal agent relationship for schedule 1, to fall it in schedule 1, the agent will be treated as agent for the purpose of schedule 1 only, where the invoice for further supply is issued by agent on his own name. Okay, and then last, para 4 schedule 1. What does it say? Import of services. You are importing services. Okay, from whom? By a related person or any establishment outside India in the course or furtherance of business, even without consideration, would be treated as supply. would be treated as supply. So there are 4 things in schedule 1. Permanent transfer or disposal of business asset where input tax credit has been taken, it will be treated as supply. Second, supply of goods or services. It could be goods, it could be services between related person or distinct person in the course of furtherance of business without consideration would be treated as supply. Third, supply of goods by principal to agent or agent to principal, it would be treated as supply, but invoice should be in the name of agent. And then the last comes import of services from a related person or establishment outside India. It should be from a related person establishment outside India. You are importing a services, it would be treated as supply even if made without consideration. So these are the 4 things in schedule 1. These are the 4 things in schedule 1. It is supply even if made without consideration, even if there is no consideration, 0 rupees, then also it will be treated as supply. Then also it will be treated as supply. Okay. Now, if any activity is supply as per 7.1, 7.1a, 7.1a, 7.1b, 7.1c, read with schedule 1, any activity is supply as per 7.1, it is supply of goods or service is decided by whom? Is decided by schedule 2. Is decided by schedule 2. Section 7.1a says activities or transaction which is treated as supply will be treated as supply of goods or services will be determined by schedule 2. Okay, any transaction under GST, it is very clear whether anything would be goods or service. So who will decide it? Schedule 2. All the items, no. In which there is confusion in the earlier law, government thought there may be some problem in the future. That transactions government has said given in the schedule 2, and they have told whether it should be treated as supply of goods or supply of service. Supply of goods or supply of service. First, transfer of. I am transferring my title in goods. Title is transferred, possession is transferred. I am transferring title in goods. It will be treated as supply of goods. Supply of goods. I am transferring title in goods under an agreement that property will pass at a future date. For example, hire purchase. You all know hire purchase. That will also be treated as supply of goods. That will also be treated as supply of goods. Then, right in goods. I am transferring right in goods. I am transferring right in goods or transferring undivided share in goods without transfer of title. That will be treated as supply of service. That will be treated as supply of service. Then regarding land, lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy land. Any kind of lease, any kind of tenancy, easement, license to occupy land, it will be treated as supply of service. Supply of service. Okay. Then regarding building, lease, letting out of building including commercial, residential complex, that will be treated as supply of service. Supply of service. We anyways know movable property is goods. Anything other than goods is service. So your transaction in immovable property will be service. Okay. Then treatment and process applied to any other person goods. That is what job work. I am doing what? I am doing treatment of process on someone else's goods. That is what supply of service. That is what supply of service. Then business assets are transferred or disposed of. That will be supply of goods. Business assets are transferred or disposed of, that will be supply of goods. Business assets are put to private use. Business assets are put to private use, that is supply of service. That is supply of service. Next is, if a person ceases to be a taxable person, then the goods forming part of the assets will be deemed to be supplied by him, It will be treated as supply of goods. However, if the business is transferred as going concern, or the business is carried on by personal representative who is deemed to be taxable person, in this case, it will not deemed to be supply and GST will not be levied. In these two cases, GST will not be levied when the business is transferred as going concern or the business is carried on by personal representative. In these two cases, GST will not be levied. Then renting of immovable property. Obviously, it is what? Supply of service. Renting of immovable property, always supply of service. Then construction of complex building, civil structure, except where entire consideration has been received after the completion certificate or first occupation, whichever is earlier, that will also be treated as supply of service. Okay. So, under construction property, basically under construction property and all, it will be treated as what? Supply of service. But if the entire consideration has been received after completion certificate, then it is not supply as per schedule 3. We'll see it in schedule 3, it is not supply. But under construction property, obviously it is supply of service. Temporary transfer or permitting use of IPR. If you are temporarily transferring IPR, intellectual property right, it is also supply of service. Development, design, programming, customization, adaptation, upgradation, enhancement, implementation. Do you do anything of IT software? You are developing it, you are designing it, you are programming it, you are customizing it. It is called as supply of service. It is what? It is supply of service. Then agreeing to obligation to refrain from an act. If you are refraining from the act, or you're tolerating some act, or you're doing some act, it is also what? Supply of service. It is also what? Supply of service. What? There are three limbs. One, refraining from an act. Second is you are tolerating any act, and the third is you are doing any act. So, and you are getting compensating for this, then it will be treated as what? Supply of service. Supply of service. Then your transfer of right to use any goods. Right to use any goods you have transferred to someone, then it will be supply of service. Then it is supply of service. Then work contract, always supply of service. Work contract under GST is always of immovable property. In the definition of work contract it is given, it is always of immovable property. So work contract is supply of service. And then restaurant and all supply of goods being food and article of for human consumption or any drink, that is also supply of service. Restaurant is always supply of service. So under GST it is very clear whether a particular transaction is supply of goods or supply of service. So any activity or transaction which is supply as per 7.1, who will decide it is supply of goods or supply of service? It is decided by what? Schedule 2. Schedule 2. In the matters there could be confusion, government has made Schedule 2, and Schedule 2 tells activities or transaction that are to be treated as supply of goods or supply of service. Supply of goods or supply of service. Then comes Schedule 3. Section 7.2 read with Schedule 3. What does it tell? It tells the activities or transaction that are neither supply of goods nor supply of service. That means that's not supply and it is not leviable to GST. If something is not supply, it is not leviable to GST. It is very clear. So this is also called as negative list under GST. These are activity or transaction which shall be treated neither supply of goods nor supply of service. Neither supply of goods nor supply of service. It is not supply, no, not leviable to GST. Not leviable to GST. The first one is service by an employee to employer in the course of or in relation to employment. It should be in the course of or in relation to employment. If it is in the course of or in relation to employment, GST is not leviable. What is that? Service by an employee to employer. Employee to employer in the course of or in relation to employment, GST is not leviable. GST is not leviable. Then service by any court or tribunal established under any law for the time being in force. What did it say? If any court or tribunal is giving you services, it is also not leviable to GST. Service by any court or tribunal established under any law for the time being in force, GST is not leviable. Then functions performed by members of parliament, members of state legislature, members of panchayat, members of municipality and members of local authority. These five: members of parliament, members of state legislature, members of panchayat, members of municipalities and members of local authority. Functions, any functions performed by them, it will not be treated as supply. It will not be treated as supply and GST will not be leviable. GST will not be leviable. Then duties performed by any person who holds any post in pursuance of the provision of the constitution in that capacity, like President of India, Speaker of Lok Sabha. So what did it say? Ki anyone who is holding any position in pursuance of the constitution, constitutional, the one who is holding the position in constitutional capacities also, it is not treated as supply. GST will not be leviable. GST will not be leviable. Then duties performed by CMD, chairperson, members, director, chairperson, members, director in a body which is established by either central government or state government or local authority and who is not deemed as employee before the commencement of this clause. What did it say? Duties performed by CMD, chairperson, member or director, chairperson, member or director of any body which is established by either central government, state government or local authority, any body which is established by central government, state government or local authority, for example TRAI. Okay, so any director of TRAI and all that. So to them whatever is paid, GST will not be leviable because it is not treated as supply. Because it is not treated as supply. Okay, I hope it is clear. Then services of funeral, burial and all these including transportation of deceased, GST is not leviable. GST is not leviable. Sale of land, GST is not leviable. Sale of land is always out of GST. Always out of GST. It is under negative list because and it is not treated as supplies. Sale of land not treated as supply and subject to paragraph 5B of the schedule to sale of building. That means in case of sale of building there are two things. Under construction property obviously it is leviable to GST, but where the entire consideration has been received after completion certificate of first occupation whichever is earlier, then in that case it is not supply, and if it is not supply, not leviable to GST. When Entire consideration has been received after completion certificate. After completion certificate. So for example, I have made a building. There are 9 flats in that. 6 flats I have sold when the property was under construction. So on that GST will be leviable. Now the completion certificate has arrived. Say for example in Jan 25 completion certificate has arrived. So after that if I'll sell these 3 flats if I'm selling, so in that case GST will not be leviable because entire consideration has been received after completion certificate of first occupation, whichever is earlier. So after completion certificate, if I am getting entire consideration, GST is not leviable. So on these 3 flats, GST will not be leviable. On these 6 flats which I have sold under construction, in that GST will be leviable. GST will be leviable. Then actionable claim. Actionable claim. You remember actionable claim where we have studied it is goods. It is goods. Now what did Schedule 3 says? Schedule 3 says actionable claims, neither supply of goods nor supply of service. So GST will not be leviable. GST will not be leviable. Other than specified actionable claim, what did they said? Other than specified actionable claim. That means a specified actionable claim is out of Schedule 3. That means it is out of Schedule 3. That means it is supply. Supply, and it will be supply of goods because actionable claim comes under the definition of goods. Comes under the definition of goods. So specified actionable claim are goods. Specified actionable claim are goods. Now what do you mean by specified actionable claim? There are 6 things which government want to tax. That's why they have kept it in the definition of specified actionable claim. That is what? That is lottery, betting, gambling, casinos, horse racing, online money gaming. 6 things. Lottery, betting, gambling, casinos, horse racing, online money gaming. Government want to tax only these as actionable claim. That's why they have kept it in. They have told it as specified actionable claim and kept it out of Schedule 3. That's why it will be taxed. So these 6 actionable claims will be taxed as supply of goods. They are taxed at 28%. Lottery, betting, gambling, casinos, horse racing, online money gaming. Okay, so these are specified actionable claim. They are treated as supply of goods. Other actionable claim like promissory note and all that, no, they are not supply. They are not supply. Okay, bill of exchange and all. Then supply of goods from a place in non-taxable territory to another place in non-taxable territory without such goods entering into India. For example, what happened? You have sold the goods. You are sitting in India. You have sold the goods from Canada to US. The goods have moved from Canada to US without such goods entering into India. So the government said that is not supply. That is not supply. GST will not be leviable. Why? Because there is supply of goods from a place in non-taxable territory, Canada, to another place in non-taxable territory, to another place in non-taxable territory, that is US, without such goods entering into India. In that case, it is not supply. It is not supply. Then supply of warehouse goods to any person before clearance for home consumption. So now I have imported the goods. The goods are kept in the warehouse. The goods are in the warehouse. Okay. In Mumbai, for example, the goods are in the warehouse. I have sold the goods to Mr. B. The goods are kept in the warehouse, but I have sold the goods to Mr. B. So in that case, the transaction between me and Mr. B will not be treated as supply. Will not be treated as supply. That means when the goods are kept in the warehouse, I am selling the goods to someone else. So that will not be treated as supply. Mr. B sold it to Mr. C. It will not be treated as supply. When it will be treated as supply? When the final person will go file bill of entry and clear the goods from the custom, and that time it will be treated as supply. What you have to remember? You have to remember when the goods are kept in the warehouse and it is sold, then it will not be treated as supply. Then it is not be treated as supply. Then supply of goods by consignee to another person by endorsement of document of title to the goods after the goods have dispatched from the port of origin located outside India but before clearance for the home consumption. So when the goods are in high seas, the goods are in high seas, the goods have, the goods have been dispatched from the port of origin located outside India. For example, from Canada, goods have been dispatched and it has not arrived India. The goods were in the high sea and I have sold the goods to you. I have sold the goods to you. In that case, the transaction between me and you will not be treated as supply. The good transaction in high seas will not be treated as supply. Okay, I have sold to Mr. B, Mr. B has sold to Mr. C, it will not be treated as supply. Okay, so high sea sales not treated as supply. So this is what is the negative list. Negative list under GST, it is Schedule 3. It is given in Schedule 3, activities or transaction that is neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of service. We have taken so many examples in this, but now it is revision, so we would be only revising it. And then so this is what we have done, section 7. Section 7. Now there is one more thing. We'll do this. There is one notification also under section 7. There is service by way of grant of alcoholic liquor license is neither supply of goods nor supply of service. What does it say? Grant of alcoholic liquor license. Grant of alcoholic liquor license. The service by way of grant of alcoholic liquor license against consideration in the form of license fees, application fees, whatever it is called, it is not leviable to GST. It is not leviable to GST. So government has notified this activity which is undertaken by the government, in which they are engaged as public authorities. It will not be treated as supply of goods nor be treated as supply of service. Okay, so in exam, if alcoholic liquor license, if the government is giving and government is taking license fees against it, it is not treated as supply. It is not treated as supply. However, other licenses, like for example mining rights, natural resources and all this, that are taxable under GST. That are taxable under GST. Okay, and tax is required to be paid by business entity on reverse charge, because government is giving the services. Okay, government is giving the services, so it will be treated under reverse charge. Other licenses, but grant of only alcoholic liquor license is neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of service. It has been notified. This is under notification. Next is concept of composite and mixed supply. So what do you mean by composite supply? It is a supply made by taxable person to a recipient. Who is making the supply? Taxable person to recipient of two or more taxable supplies. It is what? Two or more. It could be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, anything. So it should be two or more taxable supply, but it should be taxable. Okay. So two or more taxable supply. It could be of goods, it could be of service, it could be goods plus service, anything, any combination thereof. It should be naturally bundled. It should be naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business. In the ordinary course of business, it should be supplied in conjunction with each other. It should be supplied in conjunction with each other, and one of them is principal supply. Out of that, one is principal supply. Then it will be treated as what? Supply of principal supply. It will be treated as supply of principal supply. For example, you purchase laptop. So the charger comes along with it. Okay, so this is a composite supply. Why? It is two or more taxable supply which are naturally bundled. Laptop and charger are naturally bundled and supplied in conjunction with each other in the ordinary course of business. What is the principal supply? You only tell me. Obviously, the principal supply is laptop. Obviously, the principal supply is laptop. So, the rate of what? Charger. The rate of laptop will be levied in the for the rate as of charger as well. Why? Because it will be treated as what? Principal supply. It will be treated as principal supply. So, for example, on laptop the rate is 12%, on charger the rate is 28%, but the full supply will be assessed at what? The rate or charged on laptop, that is 12%. Okay, I hope it is clear. Next, what is mixed supply? What do you mean by mixed supply? So, mixed supply is again two or more individual supplies. It is not necessarily taxable. So, it is two or more individual supplies. Or it could be of goods again, it could be of service, it could be of any combination thereof, made in conjunction with each other, but for a single price. It should be the mixed supply. For anything to be satisfied as mixed supply, it should be for a single price. Only one price should be there. Where it does not constitute composite supply and it is not a composite supply, that means it is not naturally bundled, not supplied in conjunction with each other and all those things. So it is not a composite supply. Then it will be treated as mixed supply. For example, there is a gift pack which contains chocolates, candies, sweets and balloons, and it is supplied for a single price of say 2000 rupees. So this is a mixed supply. What rate of tax will be levied on this? Highest rate. Highest rate will be levied. For example, on chocolates the rate is 28%. On rest, candies, sweets and balloons the rate is say 12%. So the highest rate 28% will be levied on full supply of 2000. So very simple. These definitions are given in section 2. However, section 8 talks about taxability of composite and mixed supply. The taxability of composite supply, what does it say? Composite supply will be treated as supply of principal supply. Will be treated as supply of principal supply. That means the rate of tax of principal supply will be levied, okay, on full supply. And in case of mixed supply, the highest rate will be levied. So you can write this down. So in case of composite supply, it will be treated as principal supply. In case of mixed supply, highest rate will be levied. Okay, so this has been missed here, so you can write it down. Next, now in this chapter only two sections you have to remember. Section 7 which talks about supply and section 8 talks about composite and mixed supply. And three schedules you have to remember, which we have read with section 7. Schedule 1, activities or transaction that are treated as supply even if made without consideration. Then activities or transaction that is to be treated as supply of goods or supply of service, that is decided by schedule 2. And then comes schedule 3, activities or transaction that are neither treated as supply of goods nor treated as supply of service. Okay, so 3 schedules and 2 sections you have to remember for this chapter. Now the notifications and circulars, generally the notification and circular major circulars talks about in this chapter will say what is whether a transaction or activity is supply or not. Government has given clarifications on many different things and regarding composite and mixed supply and all those things. Okay, so those clarifications we are going to study here. So now this first clarification, this will do with value chapter. The second clarification on scope of principal agent relationship under schedule 3, schedule 1 of the CGST Act in context of delegate agent, that is DCA. So whether the DCA will fall under the ambit of agent. So you remember the DCA is like any other agent. Only the difference between other agents and DCA is DCA guarantees payment to the supplier. DCA guarantees payment to the supplier. Okay, so now here if the recipient is not able to make the payment, the DCA will allow him, he will give him the loan and then he can make the payment. So DCA guarantees payment. The difference between other agents and DCA is this only. So first of all, to any person to be called as agent under schedule 1, you remember in para 3 what is important, what is the test, who has issued the invoice. If the invoice is issued in the name of agent, he will be agent for para 3 schedule 1. If the invoice is not issued in the name of agent, it has been issued by the supplier, then he is not agent for para 3 schedule 1. So this is the basic test. This applies for all agent, not only DCA. This applies for all agent. Okay, so this is the one thing. So the first issue is regarding that whether the DCA will fall under the ambit of agent under para 3 schedule 1. So what is that? If the invoice is issued by the supplier to customer, either himself or DCA does not fall under the ambit of agent. But if invoice is issued by DCA on his own name, then he will fall under the ambit of agent. So issue 1 tells about whether he will be agent under para 3 schedule 1 or not, will be dependent upon what thing? It will be dependent upon only one thing, invoicing. If invoice is issued by DCA on his own name, then he will be treated as agent under para 3 of schedule 1 as like any other agent. Now two other issues. What does it tell? For issue 2, you remember for issue 2 and 3 we have drawn a chart in the class that we'll see. The issue 2, you remember, if it is settled that DCA is not agent. When the DCA will not be agent? When the invoice is not issued in his name. So when the DCA is not agent under para 3, then any interest to the buyer from the buyer will be independent supply, because he is not agent. It is an independent supply now on principal to principal basis, and it will not form part of supply of the supplier. It will not form. Obviously, it is an independent supply now on principal to principal basis, and it will not be subsumed in the supply of supplier. But if the DCA is agent under para 3, he is guaranteed payment. He is a agent. He has issued invoice in his name. In that case, it is not a separate supply. And it will form part of the value of supply of DCA. It will form part of value of the supply of DCA, and it will be the interest from the buyer will be included in the value as per section 15(2)(d). Remember, it will be included in the value as per 15(2)(d). Okay, so this is the thing only you have to remember, that if he is not agent, in that case any interest from the buyer will be an independent supply on principal to principal basis, and it will not form part of value of supply of the supplier. However, if he is agent, then it is not a separate supply and it will form part of value of supply of DCA. So this is what we have already seen. Okay, so this circular is done. This circular is also done. The grant of alcoholic liquor license, it is neither supply of goods nor supply of service. Then next circular, this has been wrongly come here, you can strike this out. Then next circular, levy of GST on supply of service of display of name or placing of nameplates of donor in the premises of charitable organization receiving donation or gifts from individual donors. For example, you have donated 10 lakhs rupees to a charitable trust. Now they have displayed your name in front of hall, room, any place. Okay, so now what department said? Department said, is it a consideration? Okay, the donation is in the form of consideration and it should be leviable to GST. Then government come up with clarification, no boss, no, it is not advertisement. The person has given what? The person has given the donation. The purpose here is what? He has given it to charitable organization. The purpose is philanthropic. That is it. There is no commercial gain. It is not advertisement. It has the character, the payment has the character of gift or donation, then it is not consideration and it is not liable to GST. It is not consideration, it should not be liable to GST. Government has clearly clarified it. So for example, you have donated 10 lakhs rupees to a charitable organization. They has displayed your name in front of the, in front of some room that donated by Mr. C. So in this case, it will not be taxable under GST. It will not be taxable under GST. But for example, Tata Motors has donated 10 lakhs rupees and they have, written the name donated by Tata Motors. So in that case, it could be advertisement and that will be liable to GST. If it is donated by some company's name has been displayed, in that case, it will be liable to GST. But some individual person has donated. So there are three things. There are three things in exam. If they give you, some kind of case study, you have to write 3 points. When it will not be liable to GST, the gift or donation, GST will not be levied. When the gift or donation is made to charitable organization, you have donated to charitable organization, the payment has the character of gift or donation and the purpose is philanthropic, that means it leads to no commercial gain and it is not advertisement, GST will not be levied. So if they have written donated by Mr. C, GST will not be levied. That is not advertisement. That is not advertisement. Okay, so simple clarification is there. Then there's one very big clarification that we have seen. Now what you have to remember for exam, that we'll see because we are revising right now. Clarification regarding applicability on liquidated damages, compensation, penalty arising out of breach of contract or other provisions of law. So you remember we have seen agreeing to obligation to refrain from an act or to tolerate an act or agreeing to obligation to do an act. It is supply of service. If it is supply, it is supply of service as per schedule 2. This we have seen. Now there should be two things. Government said there should be two things. If that are satisfied, then only it could be treated as supply of service. What? There must be expressed and implied agreement or contract must exist. There must be expressed and implied contract must exist. And second is consideration must flow. Consideration must flow either for refraining or for tolerating or for doing. So there are two things. If these are satisfied, then only it will be treated as supply. So now for example, in exam they ask you for, there are different scenarios are given for this point. So for liquidated damages, we have seen liquidated damages. You only tell me why liquidated damages has been put in the contract. So that contract should be performed. There is no intention that contract should not be performed. Okay, so that is, performance is the essence of contract. Okay, so now we are not going to get into detail. If in exam liquidated damages come, what you have to do, so liquidated damages are not consideration. There is no intention that the contract should not be performed. Rather, why liquidated damages has been paid? To deter non-performance, unsatisfactory performance and delayed performance, and there is no express or implied agreement that the person receiving the liquidated damages will refrain from an act or he will do any act. No, it is not like that. So that's why it is not considered as consideration. Liquidated damages are not considered as consideration and it is not to be treated as supply. It is not to be treated as supply. Then comes check, dishonor, fine or penalty. Similarly, check, dishonor, fine or penalty, it is imposed by the supplier banker for not tolerating. It is not paid for tolerating, it is paid for not tolerating, for penalizing and discouraging such act. That you should not do that, yeah. You should not dishonor the check, So it is why this penalty has been imposed for not tolerating and for penalizing. So it is not consideration. It should not be treated as consideration and it should not be taxable. So in exam, if at all check, dishonor, fine or penalty is given, you have to treat it. It is not a consideration. It should not be taxable. Then penalty imposed for violation of laws. For example, you have break the traffic signal. So again, government don't want you to break the law. Government don't want you to break the signal. Okay, so there is no agreement between the government and violator specifying these violations. Okay, so why this penalty has been charged? So that you should not violate the law. So again, it is not, there is no agreement between the government and the violators. So it is no agreement and it is not taxable. Then it is not taxable. Then forfeiture of salary or payment of bond amount in the event employee is leaving the employment before the minimum agreed period. Again, it is given in the contract. Okay, it is what, if I am paying you something, forfeiture of salary is done or the payment of bond amount is done because you are leaving before the agreed period. For example, you have told, we have agreed that you will stay in my office for 2 years, but you are leaving in 6 months. So in that case, if there is any payment of bond amount or forfeiture of salary, so it is in the course of employment, it was already agreed in the terms of employment. So in schedule 3 also we have studied. In this case, what will happen? In this case, it will be under negative list, and GST will not be leviable, it will not be taxable. Why? Because it is already mentioned in the contract. In the contract, I must have written that if you leave before agreed period of 2 years, in that case, your salary will be forfeited, or you have to pay the bond amount. So this is in the course of or in relation to employment, so it will not be taxable, it will not be taxable. Then comes late payment surcharge or fees. Late payment surcharge, so this is a general business practice. Okay, late payment surcharge fees are there, so it is a part of composite supply, it is a ancillary supply, and it will be assessed as principal supply. What is the main supply? Predominant supply, it will be assessed like that. Okay, then come fixed charge for power. Electricity is exempt from GST. Electricity is exempt. You all know electricity is exempt from GST. So any either fixed charge or variable energy charges for sale of electricity is not taxable. It is not taxable. And the last comes cancellation charges. Cancellation charges, government said okay, cancellation charges is part of composite supply only. Or generally people give in hotel you do cancellation, in flight you do cancellation. So all these cancellation charges, what is that? So it is assessed as principal supply only. Whatever the main supply is and rate is there, it will be assessed like that supply only. Okay, so you have to remember this. If these adjustments come, you have to remember, and you have to write whether it will be taxable or not. You have to remember that. Okay, so we have done a lot of examples on this particular point also, but now we are doing the revision, so we'll be revising the bullet points only. Next, clarification with respect to perquisite provided in terms of contract agreement to employee not liable to GST. Now, if the perquisites, what is the clarification? It is respect to perquisite which is provided in terms of contractual agreement. So, anything that is in terms of contract in the relation of employment, that are not taxable, and government has given a clarification for this also, because in industry there was a doubt, so government came up with clarification that the perquisite which are in terms of contract, you have paid to employee, then it is not liable to GST. Then supply of food and beverages. Now you go to PVR cinema and you order popcorn and all that. So in that case, what will happen? Supply of food and beverages at the cinema hall. So for example, you have booked a ticket now at home, and now you are going to the cinema hall, and then you are taking a popcorn. So if you are taking it, the food and beverages supplied as a part of service and supplied independent of cinema exhibition service, then it will assess to tax at a restaurant service rate. However, when booking the ticket, you have booked a bundle ticket. You have booked a bundle club together. For example, movie plus popcorn. In this case, it is a composite supply. And what is the principal supply? Obviously movie. So in that case, if the sale of ticket and food and beverages are clubbed together, such bundle supply satisfies the test of composite supply, and the entire supply will attract what GST rate applicable to the rate of cinema is the principal supply. Okay, so if you are going and plane or going and you have booked the ticket, and then after going you are booking the popcorn or food, beverages, anything, so in that case it will be assessed at restaurant service rate. However, if you are when at the time of booking ticket only you have booked the food and beverages also, then it is a composite supply, and in that case the rate of tax of what principal supply will be levied. I hope it is clear. Okay, so for clarification part, you in exam generally they don't ask you much. What you have to remember, whether it will be taxable, not how it will be taxable, that you have to remember from clarification part. Okay, then clarification on taxability of shares held in a subsidiary company by a holding company. Now, holding company ABC Limited is holding a share of its subsidiary company. So, there comes a question whether it will be treated as supply of service and whether GST will be levied. So, government said no. See, transaction and security is neither supply of goods nor supply of service. We know. Shares are securities only. They are neither supply of goods nor supply of service. Mere holding of share does not mean that there is a supply. There is a supply. Okay, so this is what you have to remember. Activity of holding of shares by a subsidiary company cannot be treated as supply of service to the said by the holding company to subsidiary, and it cannot be taxed under GST. Mere the holding company is holding the shares. How it will be treated as supply? It will not be treated as supply. It will not be treated as supply, mere holding of the share. Okay, so here we complete these clarifications, and here we complete definitely one of the most important chapters, supply under GST. Very quickly, the rapid revision we have done. So here section 7 again, it talks about what supply. Then It comes Schedule 1. It talks about activities or transactions that are to be treated as supply even if made without consideration. Then comes Schedule 2, which talks about activities or transaction that are to be treated as supply of goods or supply of service. Then comes Schedule 3, activities or transaction that are needed to be treated as supply of goods, not to be treated as supply of service. Then comes Section 8, that is what taxability of composite and mixed supply, and then we have studied the relevant circulars and the notifications here. And here we complete this chapter beta, and we will continue the next chapter in the next video. Thank you for now.